for any civil society leader or for politician. And if you really want to be successful as a human rights defender, or if you want to be successful as a politician, or if you want to be successful as a civil rights activist, I think that law education defines a lot your principles, your values, and of course your expectations, high expectations about yourself, about your activity, and of course about activity of other actors. That's why I think that mainly the atmosphere of this and my colleagues, university, my mentors, and of course my professors, they helped a lot in like shaping my ideas how justice should become the main maybe principle of existing and of civil society acting. That's why mainly it is about principles, it's about values and about shaping your mind, shaping your values, basic values. Yes.
Thank you so much. And Gauri, would you say that you had similar experience studying law, or something different? Would you add something different?
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely in general, absolutely similar in the sense that, you know, I did European law school in Maastricht, actually. And then I did a second master's in human rights. And so it was pretty clear for me early on that indeed, as Olena says rightly, I wanted to really understand how systems work before I tried to change them, right? So working as a human rights lawyer, human rights researcher, and later advocate and director, I think it's really incredibly important to be able to reach back to that basic understanding of things like constitutional law. But that same goes for political sciences, though. I mean, understanding how the dynamics work, how you know, the basics of a state function, and doing that in an international way, right? So learning what those different dynamics are in different spaces. But I would say, because your original question was, has it influenced what you do? And of course, on the face of it, absolutely. I mean, I started my career in Brussels, actually. You know, I started in European law. I was in the European Parliament for a while, and of course, I became a human rights activist, lawyer, researcher. So very much in line with what I studied. But I would say that, you know, I think many of us, once you graduate, you feel, well, this is it. I have learned everything. I am now, you know, the expert when it comes to these topics. And of course, what's really interesting is that first period after you study and then get to test a little bit. Okay, how does this actually work in practice, right? How does this actually function once you start to get a taste of that reality check and practice? And I think that's always very interesting. So yes, it's helped me a lot, influenced me a lot. But I think the real joy then comes from testing this and really getting thrown into real life.
I do find it interesting that you mentioned that, because I've heard a lot of people say just in the university that, oh, what we're learning is not really worth it. We really just have to be out there and learning in the field. Could you talk about if what you actually experience in the field matches more or less with what you learn, or is it disconnected, or what's going on there?
I would say that I'm definitely in favor learning in field, but without some theoretical grounds, it's very hard to do. I started my career as a lawyer when I was on, I think it was like after the third year of my studies. So I was pretty young. But it wasn't my first job. My first job was a journalist. I've been journalist since I've been 16 in the biggest newspaper, national newspaper in Ukraine. So, but of course, my professional career as a lawyer, as a legal counsel, it started just after 3 years of studying. And I would say I was a bit surprised because I've been expected that everything what I learned from books and everything what I learned even from laws in Ukraine, it should be implemented on practice. But it wasn't like this, of course, or not of course, but it wasn't like this. It was interesting and eye-opening experience, of course. That's why I really committed to the idea. And I know, for example, in the United States, when I've been in Yale University for like half a year, they are trying to implement this studying and combine it with practice. And they also invite professors who are really working at the field. And I think it is a right approach, because theory and practice sometimes, or especially if we are talking about practical areas like law enforcement, for example, or even lawmaking, it is a bit different thing. And if you want to understand, you need to have both views, like from theoretical point and from practical point. That's why for me it was great opportunity that I could start in my career earlier when I used to be a student, and it helped me a lot with my career. In Ukraine, like it's not like normality, but it is okay when you're pretty young and you can become like partner of legal firm. But I was one of the youngest partners of legal firm. I was 26 when I was proposed to be a partner in legal firm where I started my career. And I think it is everything it's everything due to my early starting and experiencing practice since I've been a student. Yeah, I think it's very important.
Thank you. And Gauri, same question. Do you think the realities of the field really match with the theoretical, or is it really not as worth it as it appears?
No, I think, it is of course different in reality than in the books. I mean, this is just a truth that I think none of us will be surprised by. I mean, it is just in the sense that the political dynamics, the realities on the ground, the shifting realities on the ground. I mean, all of those things change. That's not to say that it's not useful, this period of reflection and studying. I actually think that the trick is, if I may be so free to offer some advice, I guess, while you are in this wonderful period of studying, I think the real trick is, and what I've certainly gained the most from, besides, as Olena says, getting that practical experience early, I think that's really important. But just while you're studying, I think the key is, one, to really try to use that time to figure out what gives you that spark of joy and excitement and energy. What is it that you really feel you're good at, and what you can be of service around, so how you can actually play a role in this world. I think that's really key. And it's also connecting to those teachers, those professors that give you a sense that they are grounded in some reality, some professional real experience out there, right? So that mix is really important. And so this is a time you can really engage with people who have had the experience. And I would finally add, I think it's also really important, and what I loved while studying, it's just to make sure that you really understand and deeply embed in yourself the very basics of the systems we're working in. And if you see it in that way, then it becomes very practically relevant, right? So, I wouldn't take everything at face value. I mean, of course, that we all know, I mean, I've had a lot of courses. I mean, when I did European law school, for example, we did Dutch law and European law simultaneously. And, there were tons of courses that I found so boring and so unhelpful, and I never used them, right? But I would say that all of them forced me to learn something else, which is the final thing I would say. It is also just important to learn basic skills like discipline and studying and learning things which is very boring sometimes, but I do think there's value in that. And I noticed that some of the skills I've picked up in just having to deal with really difficult studies and kind of tough periods and pressures and deadlines, and is actually also really practically important. So I do think all of these things have value. You just have to keep in mind that, hey, don't be shocked if once you start working, it really is a little bit different.
Yeah, and if I can jump in with also additional two advices, like what I really feel very important when you are young, you can be more maybe I don't know, more risky. So if you feel that it is not yours, or you don't feel really satisfying, or you feel uncomfortable, even uncomfortable, just don't be afraid to change something, because it is the best time to change. When you are going to become like, I don't know, 35, 40, you will be much more careful about changing. But this is the best time to change, to make experiments with the people, with the activities, with your skills, with learnings. And even if you decide to change activity, it is also the best time. And don't be afraid. The second thing, don't be afraid to realize that, okay, I've been learning even for 4 years, and now I realize that it is not mine. Believe me, it is better to understand in 22, 23 that it is not your like, I don't know, best job in the world, or not your mission in this world, than to realize at your 40s when it is very hard to change something. So that's maybe why, for example, I decided to start with the psychology when I was 26, and it helped me a lot in my career afterwards. And now it's helping me a lot with my human rights defense activity and many, many other activities. Even with political career, it helped me a lot. So don't afraid to change something, even if it's going to change like your life dramatically.
So now that we are already talking about education, Gauri, I wanted to ask you about how you went from where you started in your education, studying law, to non-governmental organizations, to that part in your career. I wanted to learn why you transitioned in that way.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started by, actually the very first thing I did that was practical experience, like Olena said, I mean, it was quite early in my studies, actually. In my third year, I also did an internship at the foreign ministry, actually, on European law. And it's actually there that I was exposed to the human rights department, and I got sort of seconded into some work on human rights, and it's one of the reasons why I got really interested. And then I did another master's in human rights in Venice. It's this international program, and through that you could win essentially a paid internship in Brussels after, or not just in Brussels, but in one of these organizations, one of the nonprofit organizations, if you were in the top, I can't remember, top 10 or something of that course. And so I managed to get there. And so I started quite early in my career working for nonprofit organizations, because I felt very strongly that I wanted to start thinking about advocacy and changing changing what needs to be changed in a strategic way, and supporting nonprofit organizations in a way that is helpful. Because the very first thing I did in Brussels was actually in the European Parliament. So I worked in the Civil Liberties Committee, and it's a great, it's a good spot to sort of learn about, dynamics and issues and dynamics between countries. But the really more, so that's sort of the linear path. The truthful answer, though, is that it was really tough to get into this line of work. It's really hard to find a job, a proper job, the first job. I'm sure you'll all have heard of this or encountered it. If you are not from a wealthy family, right, and you cannot afford, for example, an unpaid internship at the UN in New York, or or something like that in Geneva, or you can't go to a fancy college afterwards in the US, it's just not possible for some people, including for me. So I did have a tough time in between sort of studying and that very first proper role, right? And I almost gave up, actually. I had 1 or 2 internships, and I just couldn't anymore. I was just broke. So I almost started just going back to, because I've always worked while studying, so I almost went back to just sort of waitressing. and then I got a job, my first job, which was actually on women's rights. And this is how I started. And from then on, I just knew this was the right field for me. And I dove deeper and deeper into human rights work, and this is how I continued my career.
Perfect, thank you so much. And Olena, coming from such a diverse academic background, what was it about politics that sparked your interest? Why did you finally decide to follow a career in politics?
It was a chance. Sometimes in your life, you can get this chance to change everything, and you need to make very important and I would say even courage decision. And in my case, it was like 24 hours when I needed to take this decision. It was end of summer, early elections in Ukraine. It was invasion of Russia in Crimea, and we had hard times. We re-elected new president, and everything was changing. And because I used to be a lawyer of Maidan, and having 100 people who died on Maidan and their families. So new political party, new on a national arena, not like new from the background, but on the national arena, they've been new. They decided that they are going to become platform for people from different areas, but who already committed themselves to new Ukraine, to justice, to rule of law, and to reforms, and to fighting corruption, and many, many other challenges. And that's why I was invited to participate in elections, in early elections, as member of the party. And first of all, I became the candidate, and then of course a member of the parliament. But the most interesting, yes, that I needed to decide it in 24 hours. I met with one of the leaders. She told me, if you want, we would really appreciate, and we think that you can do a lot with justice and law enforcement bodies, because you are already professional. You've been working with them for a long period of time, and you've been always disappointed about them. You've been criticizing them, and now you have a chance. So to change it, we started from the very beginning, this talking about, how the theory and practice. And if you want to change something, you need to realize how it works. And at that period of time, I've already knew how it could be and how it is in reality. And reality was very disappointed. And that's why they hit it in my heart, because I really wanted to have something better for future of my children. And of course I wanted to change something in the system which was really frustrating for lawyers, for just even citizens, because they didn't feel that they have enough justice, and they didn't feel that they can really defend themselves in the courts. That's why I decided, yes, okay, I can wait when somebody will change it, or I can try to do it myself. That was a main moment of switching. So, and maybe this is a difference with, this traditional path of a politician. When you are starting from the lowest level, you are starting with the local politics, then you are coming to the regional politics, and then you are trying with national politics. In my case, I started from the highest level of the national politics, but I believe that I had enough inspiration, and I had enough experience at that time to change something. Just I'm afraid that when you are coming to reality, it's not enough just your inspiration and your personal experience. This is a problem.
So I think you've both already touched upon the difficulties or challenges in terms of decisions that have to be made in order to get to where you are. And I really wanted to delve a bit more into that. So I wanted to understand what were some of the challenges that both of you have faced, the most significant challenges that were required to get to where you are today. That's an open question. Either of you could take a.
I can start. I think, yeah, I mentioned one already. I think things are complicated when you don't come from a family that has a lot of, I don't know, connections and has entry points, or where it's normal that everyone is successful, and it's not straightforward, as well as financially. It's not easy to choose a path that is very competitive. It's quite tough to get into this field of work, I think. But I think that the most important thing to choose right at the beginning is to have a really sound and solid understanding. And that's what I had. And I think Olena described the same thing, which is a really fundamental drive to do what you want to do and what you believe you can actually contribute. I mean, the core is not just about what you want to do, it's also what you think you can actually offer. And so that drive, that definitely pushed me through some of those tough early moments. I think another challenge that I wanted to mention that's really relevant is, I went into human rights research, and I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of women, mostly sexual violence survivors. Worked a lot with refugees and migrants for a long time, all over the world, but then especially in Europe, in my own countries. And I actually completely burnt out. And this is just something I wanted to mention. It's actually really, this can be quite tough work. And I think it's useful to say that, because you have to learn quite early on how to actually take care of your own health, your own mental health, your own abilities, your own boundaries, to be able to do this type of work in the long run. Because it's actually, if you do it well, it's actually quite tough. So that was sort of a second big challenge that I faced. I did actually hit a wall at some point where I wasn't able to continue for a while. So I wanted to share that.
So, of course, on different stages of my career, I had different challenges. But I think it is very important to talk about the politics, because it is a very specific career. And I feel like not many politicians, they will tell you the truth. But the truth is sometimes you are making mistakes. And mainly you are making mistakes about your opinion that your vision is the best one. In some, I don't know, concrete problem, or in general, sometimes we don't feel this, this reality. Sometimes you think that, like, I know everything, I learned everything, and I think that my vision is the best vision. And then sometimes, and mainly, you are facing reality when you don't have enough supporters, when your arguments are not persuasive enough, or you don't have enough partners, even if you have really great vision, but to push this vision, to find the supporters and to find, I don't know, people who will really help you to implement this vision. And in politics, it's very important. I think that my main challenge and my main problem, and also obstacle for politician, was that when I came, because I came from like professional background, not from political background. I didn't have enough partners, chains, and supporters as politician. I was a great lawyer, I think so. I was I believe more or less like I had good personality with really open heart and the will to change something, but I didn't have supporters because I didn't build this political chain of supporters. And I think this is the most difficult thing, to persuade people that you are professional enough, that you are trustworthy, and that you are somebody who could do something, like that you could be efficient. And working with people, it is the hardest thing. Like when you are when you work with books, I don't know, with theories, when you work even with machines or with data, with anything, like it's much more easier than when you work with people, because people, they are so different. They have their own feelings, they have all their own emotions, they also have their own beliefs. And how to find this balance between your vision, between your beliefs and consensus with people is very difficult. I think it's still my main challenge, how to reflect on different opinions, how to find this consensus, and how to build trust. And I think that the next crisis, not just in Ukraine, but in the world, would be the crisis of trust, especially after pandemic, especially after this, I would say, closing the borders and trying to fix problems inside the countries without contribution to each other, without cooperation with each other. This would be the main challenge, and for politicians, it would be definitely the main challenge next 5-10 years.
Thank you so much for both of you sharing your challenges, and also, of course, you have faced difficulties, but you are both successful women. So we would like to also ask you about the successes in your career. Was there a main turning point, you would say, or would you say that your successes were more incremental? If you can share a bit about it, maybe Gauri, you can start.
Yeah, sure. I find it always hard to talk about success, in our own context. Maybe this is actually quite a gendered thing too, but it's, because I have changed what success looks like for me over the course of my career, right? My dream when I started studying was actually to do human rights work properly, right? Like, so to really be a human rights activist lawyer and to be able to help people, right? That is simple as that. And actually, my really interesting turning point in a way came when I actually achieved my dream job. I really think that my dream job for the first, I would say, 10 years of my career was to be, in charge of the human rights work across the areas that I deeply, deeply care about. So migration, refugees, and women's rights, for the biggest human rights organizations in the world. And so I did that at Human Rights Watch, and I did that at Amnesty International. And so I felt, this is what I want to do. This is it. And then, as I mentioned, I completely burnt out. So I started to think, actually, what is success then, right? And I was on top of my career in terms of this space, right? It's a specific field. If you want to be in that space, that is a very, very good place to be. And I deeply value that experience, and I will never forget especially the direct work, right? The one-on-one conversations I've had with so many people who are just discarded by the systems we live in. And so I will always carry that with me. But I started to realize, okay, I actually want to do something a little bit different, and something that potentially allows me to make even more change possible in the world. And this is why I ultimately decided to actually move fields to now where I am actually a philanthropist, but I would say sort of an activist one. So I look at a whole field of organizations, and I try to create and build and support new leaders, and make sure that we do that in a way that is sustainable and healthy and effective, and we have real impact. And so I feel that the big turning points were, one, actually reaching those goals that I had, which is incredibly privileged and wonderful after a lot of struggle and fighting. So that was a beautiful moment. And then equally beautiful, I think, was the moment that I realized maybe what I was thinking of as my dream job was only the beginning. And there's actually a lot of other things that you can do. And it's a wonderful, liberating moment as well, to see that there's a whole world out there of different possibilities and different tests. And so I changed quite late in life. As Olena said, it's easier in the beginning, but it's a wonderful notion that it's okay to shift as well, and adjust and find new challenges as well.
So I think I can continue this idea of liberation yourself, because mainly all my turning points, they've been connecting to this. My first turning point, it was, and by the way, all of them, they've been connected to somehow downshifting, if I may say so. But first one, when I skipped and I decided to finish with the journalism, because I felt that it is compromise with my values, and it is compromise with my principles, and I didn't feel that I feel like that I can like write whatever I want, and there is a freedom of speech and freedom of mind, because we had like my and when I liberated myself, I felt like, okay, the whole world like is there for me, and I can continue with something else. Then I've been for a long time a lawyer, and I had very successful career. As I mentioned, like I've been partnering in a law firm. I've been in many like Ukrainian Bar Association. I've been also in the board of Ukrainian Bar Association, and also the youngest board member. And for young women, especially in very, very conservative country like Ukraine, it was a great career. At my 30s, I've been traveling a lot. I had very good income, and I really was successful from both points of view, like from professional point of view and from financial point of view. But then I felt like I became something like I don't know, slave of this financial system and system of like of success, but success from the point of view of like of general understanding how society think about success. But it doesn't mean that it is something about your success. And when I've been like put in this situation when I had to take this decision that I need like to skip my career and to change it to political career, and it was great downshifting with money, because like in Ukraine, politicians they have very low salaries, I would say, like compared to a commercial lawyer, like very low salaries. But I was very happy because I felt that it is something what I can do from the point of view of scale and of something which is bigger than me. And it is very important in your life to have this opportunity to do something that bigger than you. Because if it's about money, it is about yourself, first of all. You're thinking how to buy apartment, how to, I don't know, to plan your travels, how to have nice things, but it is everything about you. And in the very end of the day, I realized that you feel this inspiration and happiness when it's something bigger than you. And I think that the turning points in my careers and in a future career, it would be everything which connected to this idea that bigger than you. If you can be part of the idea which bigger than you could be very happy.
Thank you so much. And also, we would, of course, like to ask you about your experience as a woman in your careers. And Gauri, you talked about this gendered idea of success. And also you, Olena, talked about the challenges of working in a conservative country. So how would you say that being a woman has both challenged you and gave you opportunities in your careers? Whoever wants to start.
Okay, I can continue because I already mentioned that Ukraine is a very conservative country. Conservative, I wouldn't say that in a positive way. More in a way that like for many years, woman means wife, mother, I don't know, like somebody who are staying at home and should take care of the family, should take care of husband, man, and children, but the career, it should be, or it could be, but it shouldn't like be the first or the biggest part of your life. And success for Ukrainian women always hard, and especially I would say that if you go through the figures, mainly Ukrainian women, they're in the mid management, but very low percentage in the high management. So, and I believe it is first of all because at least our country, it is man country, where like men decide about most important things in the country. As a rule, it is politics and money and financial system and even economics. It's very closed systems, and it is man clubs. And it is very hard to get to this man club. And my feeling, like I'm going to skip my challenges, how I've been fighting for my place in this club. But I had a lot of challenges, and I don't want to elaborate about this. Main obstacles like age. Of course, if you are nice or good-looking woman, it is also an obstacle, because it is very hard to believe, at least for Ukrainian men and sometimes women. We have this myth that if you like good-looking, then you can't be smart. It is not combined. Yes, it is also very controversially thing in Ukraine. And also in my country, this lack of support to especially to young women in their careers and their success. But what I want mainly what I want to mention, that it is like two main lessons. First one, and I think it's not like just about Ukraine, but it is in many countries. Women should more support women, because it's still a rule for men, but it's not a rule for women. as we maybe because of our nature, we are more competitive between each other than men. Men, they are more supportive. So to learn to this collaboration and support, it is very, very important. If we really want like to get this woman power in collaboration and in supporting each other in all the issues, and maybe even to create some kind of this chain of support, or this, I don't know, new ideology of women's support. And the second one, very important thing, like you should believe in yourself. And I spend a lot of energy to prove to somebody else that I'm good enough, that I deserve to be where I've been, and many, many other things. You shouldn't waste this energy. Don't make my mistakes. Just if you know that you want to do something, think about the plan and focus on this plan, and like put all your energy to this, but not to prove to somebody that you really want to do this or to be at some position.
Gauri, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say first that I absolutely face barriers because I'm a woman. I face barriers because I was a young woman getting started. I was very young in every job that I had. I started studying very young, so everything was always very young. And I would say because of my social economic background. Just want to be clear here that I am, however, a white woman, right? So I do hold privilege because of that. And I'm also not, for example, a transgender woman, so there I'm just conscious that, there are many amongst us who face a lot worse. And so we also have a job to be conscious of that. But basically, I would say there's also great advantages. Not so much in the traditional system, right? Because we are living still in the patriarchy, but there are great advantages in actually doing the work. So in the human rights work, for example, I mean, I was a human rights researcher doing work in countries around the world. And as a woman, I was just able to get more information. I was just more able to blend in, to work with, to interview women to start with. My male colleagues were not able to actually reach enough women and get accepted into spaces. I did a lot of work in refugee camps. It was much easier for me. Hard work, but much easier for me actually than for my male colleagues. And the other piece that I wanted to talk about, which I think is a really important, almost like a trick, being underestimated is a great advantage sometimes. Being able to understand how you work with that can actually be an advantage, which sounds contradictory, but it's essentially I'm thinking of, I was doing a lot of work with government officials, ministers, prime ministers, when I was an advocacy director at Human Rights Watch in particular, and I was a young woman doing that, but I had a lot of experience. And I remember, we got a lot of information from government officials because they just thought, oh, little lady, I'll humor you, And B, we managed to get quite a lot of things done because it was almost a relationship of surprise, so once they realized that I was serious and I knew more about the issue than they did, and I was able to offer real solutions and advice. And it's that element of surprise that actually created a stronger relationship in the end sometimes. So not undermining the very serious issues, frankly, that I've also faced, which also revolve around sexual harassment. It was also tougher to do my job, facing those kinds of issues. As I said, many times underestimated, very, very difficult to negotiate in jobs, lots of cliche and important barriers. But I still am much higher in terms of the pecking order as some of the other women that I know. And B, there are advantages. And the trick is to know your worth and to just not accept the status quo, and look for those advantages and make them work for you. And ultimately, if you can, help actually change this system. You know, this is kind of a duty that we all have, I think.
So given all these challenges that both of you have experienced and seen, I was wondering if things have gotten better over the years, if things have changed.
Everything is changing, like, of course. I think that definitely now we have much more opportunities, even to create the coalition, create coalitions, create new ideas, even push through different, I don't know, through different innovative things. First of all, and the second one, I think that also just even mindset of many generations have been changed for years. Like if you now ask young people about gender issues, in many countries, they even won't understand this question. Like more or less, I feel that we have like a huge and very important shift in mindset, and it is very important because it is about changes not just in formalities like gender policies, gender-based financing or something else, but it is changes first of all in the mindset, in culture, in the attitude, in the behavior. And I think everything starts from your families, and all women and all men, they used to be children, they used to be sons and daughters. And it depends on mothers, fathers, parents, teachers, how they like accept themselves, how they accept other gender, and how they accept this world, and what is like equal opportunities. What does it mean for them? And I strongly believe that it is everything about equal opportunities. It is not about preferences. It is not about helping somebody and ignoring others. It is about just providing equal opportunities to all genders, to all like children, to everybody. And this should be the main idea and main efforts for politicians, for governments, and for citizens, just because we are playing a very important role in this.
Thank you. And same question for you, Gauri. You lived up in a very different geographical region even, so I was wondering what your take was on this question.
Yeah, sure. And I'll keep it short because I'm super keen to actually hear from everyone. I think everyone's been very patient. So I'd love to, I'm curious what everyone's up to. But yeah, I think, look, yes, you should always and can always point to progress. I think that's quite important. Things have shifted. I certainly see a change, if in nothing else, but sort of the confidence levels of at least women that I see in my team, and which is just fantastic. I do think that ultimately, I'm interested in pathways into power. So how people are able to, whether it's women or you know, minorities, for example, or other groups who are not overrepresented in power, whether it's politics or government or different positions. I think that this is still a very big problem also in Western Europe. So, you know, the fact that you have absolute abilities to now climb up, you can become a leader, you can, you know, in certain organizations, in certain fields. When it really comes to positions of power, it's still we're still quite far behind where we should be. So you know, it's a mixed picture. It's heading in a good direction, but I do think that we have some really systematic issues to work on. And I would say the most important thing to share is that the biggest mistake we can make, I think, as women, it's one of many, but one big mistake that we can make is to ignore the plight of others. So to start just thinking in a linear way, in a sort of gender versus, you know, I think it's really important that we keep that mantra in mind of who are we excluding ourselves, and just be very self-critical actually when it comes to climbing up and figuring these things out. And so it's my dream that, you know, we don't just work on gender equality, we also figure out how we can together lift up each other across a different spectrum as well.
Thank you so much. And before we hear some questions, do you have some advice for university students who are interested in following a career in each of your fields? What would you say?
First of all, I would suggest just to try to keep connection to your students and to your professors as much as possible. Don't forget this, because mainly network is the main thing that you can have. A network is your main asset. And you should keep this asset, you should develop this asset, because mainly in the future, I believe that communication, changing of expertise, changing of opinions, and still possibility to have this connection to the expertise, it would be very important.
Thank you.
That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, that's great advice. I would say, one, spend a lot of time on figuring out what you actually love doing. Such a cliche, right? But it's really true. It's actually really hard. Yeah, it's really difficult because it changes, but figuring out what you really love to do, I think, is key. I would say really learn how to use your skills, right? And develop them. I just think that the flip side of overconfidence, right, is it's not overconfidence. The flip side of sort of a sense of entitlement when one studies. I'm self-critical here. I had this when I graduated, you know, the sense of now I know everything. Come to the field with a sense of service and humility and understanding that you have a lot to learn. I really think that's important. I think not humility as in, oh, please tell me what, no, but a genuine willingness and desire to just hone a skill set. You know, I think that's really key. And there's lots of practical things there that I'm happily going to later. But I would say, finally, this is a random thing, but I'm a little bit obsessed with this at the moment. So I just want to put it out there. I've been working in this sort of community with lots of people from my background and like women of migrant backgrounds and all sorts of different people. If I would have had the wisdom in my 20s to figure out how to handle money, it would have changed my life. It's so important. And by that, I mean just knowing what it's worth, understanding the value of work, understanding how to save, understanding these basic things, invest in that. I'm just saying that in a field where we are all in the clouds, we are idealistic, we are not focused on money, as Olena said, or you take a big cut, you know, to go into a different field. Early understanding of how to manage money is so important, especially for those of us who don't come from money. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I wish someone had told me that early on.
Thank you so much. Very valuable advice, and it has been a pleasure to hear from you. So now all of you have the opportunity to pose your questions. If you can please send them in the chat, that would be amazing. Okay, we have one already. So for Gauri, have you noticed a change in the way that a team works when a woman versus a man leads it?
Yes, I would say is the first answer. Although I think the key is that a certain style of leadership is necessary. And it is true that often women possess that style. So it's a style of leadership that allows space for vulnerability, for openness, for transparency, for especially vulnerability around it's okay to fail, a culture of health and sharing, of excellence, driven not by numbers, but by a sense of drive and perspective. And all of those things are possible both by men and women. But yes, I do very much see still a difference in leadership in that way. I just want to be clear that it can be done by both genders. It's not a cop-out.
Thank you. And we also have a general question here. So Caroline asks, what can men do to support women?
It's a great question, by the way, because I wanted to mention this, but I didn't mention, sorry, I forgot, but in my career and also in my personal development, men helped me a lot. I felt a lot of, I was really lucky to feel a lot of support. And if you, like in your future careers or maybe personal lives, really could find somebody who for example, supports you in your personal choices. For example, I've been lucky now. I'm divorced, but during my parliament, I had a husband, and he was really very supportive, and he helped me a lot, and he's like been very patient about everything, about my tough schedule, about my travelings, and he helped me a lot with advices, and sometimes he been keeping me to reality. So yes, it is very important from both points of view, from personal and of course from professional point of view, and it is very inspiring and powerful when men can help you and can support you.
Yeah, I would just add to that maybe the point of there's also just certain things not to do as men. I think it's important to become familiar with the notion of mansplaining, for example. You know, making sure that you're just quite conscious of giving space and supporting women and each other in general. And I guess it's important to know that, as I am very conscious of understanding my own privileges, it's important for men to understand the same and understand that it's more than just being aware of it, but that there's actions you can take, including things like just giving space, for example, when you are on a board, making sure that there's women on the board, making sure that there's women of color on the board, making sure that you are giving space so you can quit the board and actually, you know, things like that. There's actually very practical steps that we can all take to create more space for others.
Thank you. And Lore asks Gauri that about burnout. So you mentioned going through that. How would you go about establishing this balance, especially keeping in mind that you don't want to damage your career so much?
Yeah, so this is the great fallacy that's out there. I have never been more successful since setting boundaries. So as in, setting boundaries is not a contradiction with being successful in your career. It actually allows you to be better at your job. So this is really important to understand. It allows you to focus better. It allows you to work more efficiently. It allows you to understand what matters to you, so you make choices that are wiser. Otherwise, you are just in the grind. And there's a real disease of busyness, and a recognition of busyness as somehow valuable. That's an illusion. And so it's really important from the beginning to be very conscious of focus, priorities, a sense of security around what it is you're trying to achieve in your job. And this can be in any role, also in an internship, you know. It's really important, even if it's about taking minutes in a meeting, right? Focus, understanding what you're doing, and then getting it done, versus I'm so busy, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. Or really what we're doing is half the time we're just on social media and kind of, you know. So boundaries are a part of a successful career. They're not a detriment to it. And so if you are in a role where you are forced to work in a certain way to show that you're so busy all the time and you're always available, you're in the wrong place. And you know, you have to set your own limits, your own boundaries, and they're not always about setting work-life balance. They're also just about what you find meaningful in the job. Can you work on issues that you find interesting? is it possible for you to grow? Are you respected? Are you seen? All of those things are part of burnout as well, not just the hours that you work. But again, please do not misunderstand that boundaries really are a way to be good at your job rather than a detriment to it. It's really important to.
Thank you. And Olena, we have a question for you here from James, who asks, how is the female representation like in the Ukrainian parliament and the political parties over there?
So, like, it is not so optimistic, I would say, but still we are making progress. During my conviction in parliament, it was 11% of women. Now it is almost, I think, 18. And we also could pass through the parliament some special regulations and demands to provide not equal, but representation of both genders and like quotes. And it helped a lot to improve the representation of women in parliament. But mainly I need to say that it is not about even legislation, it is more about society. Because in Ukrainian society, it is a huge challenge of like taking women as a professional, and just even in supporting women. I mentioned that we don't have enough support of women from women. And of course, we don't have enough encouragement of women political careers from side of men, and mainly all the political parties, they're managing, and the leaders, they're males. So this is a huge problem, but still I feel like young women who are becoming more and more active in political life, they're like shifting these tendencies. And next parliament, I believe that it could be even more successful from this point of view. And I also believe that very soon, maybe not next time, but even maybe next time, someday woman will become president in Ukraine. I really believe in this.
Thank you. We also have another question for you. This time is a much more political one here from Dede, who asks, what is your personal stance towards the growing influence of Russia on Ukraine and its EU relations or ambitions?
First of all, I can hardly agree that it is a growing influence of Russia, because comparing to influence of Russian Federation on Ukraine, for example, 10 years ago, and now, it is a huge difference. Because after Revolution of Dignity, I would say that we had like dramatic and huge shift from even pro-Russian politics and pro-Russian political parties in parliament and just all over Ukraine. And of course, Russian aggression played, I would say, the main role in this, because many citizens, they of course felt, first of all, they felt that there is this like just threat from this country. And from the other point of view, they realized that EU and EU direction and association agreement with European Union, it is very important direction to Ukraine, how to develop and where we want to move on. And also, I think that support of this European path in Ukrainian society it has been growing like for years, and it's still growing, and majority, especially young people, they feel that our future with EU family, with EU values, and they've been ready to fight for this. I need to remind that the revolution of dignity started first of all because of this EU choice. Our president that days, Yanukovych, he refused to sign EU association agreement with EU. That's why this revolution started firstly. And it was the first revolution on territory of Europe. And it was the first time when people died for EU values. So that's why I hardly can agree that it is a growing influence of Russia. No, it is declining of this influence from year to year.
Thank you so much. There's a question from Valentina about the advantages of being a woman in the field. And Gauri, you briefly touched upon this, so I don't know if you want to add something. And then Olena, also, if you have something to add about the advantages of being a woman.
Look, I like being a woman. It's a great thing. We don't, there are many advantages in some ways. I think that, I mentioned some, I won't elaborate on those again, but as I said, in my actual practical work, it's been quite helpful in terms of research and sometimes advocacy. I would say also, in addition, I really believe that we're in a new phase when it comes to what is going to be quote unquote successful at work. The more, this has to do with certain jobs being replaced, certain ways of working, development around DEIJ issues, for example, all of those things. As all of these things are happening simultaneously, I really think that actually for you guys, for this generation, if I can call it that, it's actually going to be really valued to have female leaders in important positions of power. I really believe that. I don't even just think that it's sort of a slow progression. I think that it's going to be a really strong advantage ultimately to have those often slightly more innate abilities to lead from a position of trust, vulnerability, openness. I actually think it might become a really important advantage, but I'm being optimistic here. I hope that's the case. But I do think it's important again to emphasize that don't let these so-called barriers hold you back. There really are ways of getting around them, even though sometimes it feels like there really is something pressing down on us. It's a bit harder. We all fought a little bit harder, but that fighting spirit and ability to fight is actually also quite a useful skill to train and develop. So that's my slightly positive spin on it.
Olena, what would you say? If we can keep it short so that we can get through all the questions.
Of course, there are always advantages and disadvantages, and mainly if you can just focus on your advantages, of course, you can be much more successful. But I believe in harmony. I think that in any area, it is very important harmony. And because men and women, they both have their advantages and disadvantages, and mainly they're coming from the different nature of these two genders, I think that the future in this harmony, if you can combine it, so you can combine strengths of women and men, then you will get the maximum. This is my really religion, I would say.
Thank you. We have another question here from Freya, this time for both of you, who asks, I have a question for both of you when it comes to having children and staying in business. As a young woman with dreams and ambitions for my career, it seems there is never a good time to have children. Do you have any wisdom to share on this topic?
I would be very short on this. I don't have children. I wanted to have them when I've been married, but it was really very hard to combine political life because it was really dynamic and harsh. But I believe that if I could succeed and could be pregnant, of course, I could find a way how to combine it, because I saw from experience and examples of my colleagues, women who they even now working in parliament, and they have 3 children, and they can combine their very successful careers and been very I think very good moms and wives. So I think everything is possible. It depends on planning. It depends on your partner, because it's very important how you are going to agree on different obligations, and how we are going to agree on just growing children together. That's all.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is such an important question, actually, because we don't talk about it enough. I mean, it's a bit unfortunate in a way that neither of us have kids. So, it's almost like a, but for me, actually, it was by choice. And so it had actually nothing to do with my career, honestly. And who knows what can still happen. I'm not 100% sure yet. But basically, I think that it's absolutely possible. I mean, this is actually something that comes back a bit to what I said earlier about boundaries, priorities, understanding what matters to you when, right? I have so many examples in my life of women who have done both. It's just, you have to let go of this perfectionism. Like, it's not going to be, this illusion that, we can do it all. And if you just lean in, it's all fine. I mean, no, it's not possible to be there 100% of the time for a kid and 100% of the time for your career. That's just not possible. So you have to understand what your boundaries are, what you can manage. And the first decision, I totally agree with Olena, the first decision you have to make is partnering up, right? If you want to do this with a partner, or if you're going to do this on your own, you have to figure out what your support system is. So those are some thoughts, but I really cannot stress enough how this is all possible. You just have to let go of the ideas of perfection around both motherhood and career. And then you can absolutely do it.
Thank you so much. You have both briefly touched on the topic of partners, and we have also before talked briefly about how men can help. And to complement this, Timothy has a question for both of you. In your experience, what are the main things that male colleagues can do to change the patriarchal status quo?
First of all, they need to believe in my religion, that together we can be stronger than separate, and just fighting with each other, or I don't know, competing to each other. In my country, of course, what would I expect? And of course, I would be very appreciative if men could be more open-minded. And because sometimes they just don't want to believe that women can be equal and can have the same I don't know, abilities, opportunities, and even experiences and expertise. And this third one, it is about, I think it is about just given opportunity. And maybe sometimes about more critical point of view about themselves, because sometimes it is very hard to believe that somebody could be more, for example, experienced or clever than you, even if, especially if it's woman. In my country, this is a problem.
Yeah, I was gonna just be a bit blunt and say in good, I guess, Dutch fashion, that, number one, don't harass anyone. That would be great. Number two, don't manclaim, don't mansplain, don't talk over women. That would be super. And third, I on a slightly more serious note, although these issues are real and I see them all the time, right? So that would be a good starting point. But for this group, who I assume is much more, evolved and keen on this, collaborate. I love what Olena is saying. I mean, understand that your work will be better if you team up with a diverse set of people, and that includes gender, but also other forms of diversity. That's what makes good work. There's plenty of evidence in actually all fields, business and politics, in the nonprofit sector, that if you want to achieve significant change, if you want to be successful, if you want to be impactful, having, for example, a diverse board, having teams that work across different lines is just better. And so men have to participate in that, lead that, encourage that, and be part of that as much as they can.
Thank you. So we have some more questions here. We're going to try to power through them. We are running low on time. But for Olena, we have a question from Tis, who asks, to what extent is there broader political support in Ukraine to start emancipating women within society at large, also in politics and positions of power in general?
I think it's still a hard question, and mainly it was pushed through with the help of our international partners, but mainly I should be very honest that there is no understanding enough in society and between just Ukrainian citizens, even Ukrainian women, that why do they need to fight for their equal opportunities and basic rights. And it is a difficult question, cultural, historical, but still I feel that there is a huge shift, and this shift started from the leadership and also political leadership.
Thank you so much. And now last question from Emma to both of you. Do you think that the newly proposed European law that pushes companies to close the gender pay gap will contribute significantly to the situation of women in power?
I think it is just the first thing. It is about justice, first of all, and it is about about treatment equally, and I think it is a starting point for many shifting, and it's just fair not to have this gap. This is my point of view, and for me it is always, and many things, it is about justice, and this one is mainly about this.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I actually changed my mind a bit on this. I used to be a bit dismissive of this type of legislation because I felt there's bigger fish to fry. And it sounds awful that I say this now, but I really, because I was working on rape, and I was just so involved in issues that just felt so much more serious, And yet, actually, this is a really important starting point. When you talk about power, you talk about money. When you talk about power, you talk about the ability of women to grow in their roles and to actually lead and to have examples of women leaders. And so I actually think this is really important. And I do think that it's just too slow if you don't legislate. So yeah, I do think it could be a catalyst for some of this broader equality work, as we've seen in some countries where this has been initiated already. So I think it's a step. A lot more needs to happen in these kinds of laws, but I do think it could be a catalyst for a shift in society around thinking around value of people who work as leaders.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. So we are done with questions. I'm going to wrap up the event now. So thank you everyone for attending tonight's event. We hope this gave you an opportunity to better understand work in politics as a woman. And we would also like to thank the O20 team, who has worked very hard to coordinate the second edition of Women in Power and make these events possible. And finally, a very large thank you to our two speakers, Olena Sotnyk and Gauri van Gulik. If you want to find or share this event with others, we have recorded this and we will post it on our website. And if you have any questions about O20, let us know, and follow us on our social media channels. So thank you so very much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you very much.